So you grew up in obviously wartime, parents incredibly devoted Muslims, but your mom's covering her, covering you up because she obviously loved you. Do you have some good memories as a kid? Like, what did you play sports? Were you able to do some of those kind of fun things, or was it really just so affected by war that you were not able to engage in some of those things that kids often do?
Yeah, our fun activity, other than playing soccer on the streets
Mm.
barefoot with these plastic balls,
Wow.
it was going to mosque, learning how to become a soldier, and learning how to recite the Quran, learning Arabic. Most of my childhood, as much as I remember, was being in mosque and being in Quran classes and learning to to be a good Muslim, to devote my life, to be a pious, a religious, good Muslim, to fulfill what is Islam wants from me. And
Mm.
that's all I remember. To be honest,
Mm.
we did uh, kids stuff, but everything was in the neighborhood mosque. I remember, Sean, when I was 7, 8 years old, going to mosque after school. We went to do the prayers, we went to do religious duties, but they trained us. They would give us these army uniforms. They call the Basiji uniform, the voluntarily army uniforms. They would wear those to us, show us how to dismantle a gun, a Kalashnikovs, AK-47s, and things of that inside a mosque. That was part of our training. They would pretend that there is a bomb coming, this noise, this whistle that bomb has, rockets have. They would play that, and then we had to jump down and try to hide and learn how to be preparing ourselves for those type of things. And they would show us the pictures, the movies of war, the bloodshed, the sacrifices, the
Mm.
the chemical bombings, the impacts of those things. This was my childhood growing up, watching those stuff, learning how to be a good soldier, and devoting my life to this greater cause of martyrdom for Islam. The culture of martyrdom, the culture of war in Islam, the culture of bloodshed and being a shaheed and dying for the sake of Allah. That was that's that's what I learned as a kid growing up in mosques and the Quran classes, and that was like a training that the icon, the idol of our time. When I grow up, still you can go and look on the internet. His name was Hussein Fahmide. It was a 13-year-old teenager who wraps around himself grenades and stops the tanks from invading his city by killing himself as a suicide bomber. He was the icon. He was the
Oh.
person we looked up to, that we wanted to be like him. He was all over our books as kids when we grow up uh, in the 80s, in the 90s. And that's what we wanted to become. That's who I wanted to become.
Wow. Now, in some ways, you've answered this, but maybe articulate for us how your family practiced your how you practice your faith. So obviously, I assume you're praying 5 times a day. You practice Ramadan. You were taking Quran classes. Like, walk us through what that looked like to be a Muslim growing up.
That those things that you just mentioned, those are very little things that you do as a Muslim. Islam dictates every aspects of your life. It is
Hmm.
the way you breathe, the dress code, the way you conduct yourself in front of other people, what you say, what you don't say, what you eat, what foot even you use to go to the bathroom. How do you shower? Everything, the proper ceremonial washing of yourself to touch the Quran, everything, every little details of your life comes from Islam. There's the major pillars. Of course, you have to pray to Allah facing Mecca and reciting some chapters of the Quran that you have memorized. But it's way beyond that. You're consumed by these religious duties. You can't even shave your beard because that's against Islam. And even how far you can grow them, or how what color they should be, or everything, everything. So Yes, you do those rituals, the major ones such as fasting and all that, but then the details of your life and things that you constantly are concerned about. For example, you do the 5 times of prayer, but you have these beads that you repeat, chant the name of Allah throughout the days. You just say these things in Arabic that you have memorized that supposedly will add points to the right side of the scale. That's part of it. And then you take the Quran and you constantly memorize the Quran because they believe that if the Quran, which is the holy Allah's revealed word, if it's in your mind and it's your heart, Allah will not burn you in hell. So you try to put it as much as you could in your mind and your heart to keep it there, that you're away from the hellfire. And I would sit down and hours
Mm.
just try to memorize as much as I could as a Muslim. As Shia Muslims, as I said, these are just the beginning of everything. As Shia Muslims, where we lived in the apartments in city of Tehran, right next to our door, there was this man who was a very religious man. His house was dedicated to the morning ceremonies of the Shia imams. I explain what this means. So, the self-claimed prophet of Islam had a son-in-law because he couldn't have sons. His daughter married a man by the name Ali. He's the most important. The Shia believe that he is the first caliph or the first leader of the rightful leader of the Shia Islam. And this man died with a sword to his head. I'm talking about Ali while he was doing his prayers. So um, we, in order to approach God in Islam, especially in Shia, we just don't directly go and talk to Allah or talk to Muhammad because those are much higher levels of spirituality. But for us to connect to Allah, to act, to be approved by Him and earn His acceptance, we connect to Ali, and then Ali connects us to Him. Ali is the medium. So we ritually mourn for his
Mm.
death and the death of his sons, which is Hussein, Hassan, and it comes to Sajjad and many of them. 14 centuries ago, they died. Today, in their anniversary of death, we mourn, wail, cry, ritually mourn for their death. It just like happened yesterday. So this man dedicated, this rich man that was a merchant in Tehran, he dedicated his big house to this cause. Um, and the time of this ritually mourning, I would just walk out of our home and go to his home, and then they would recite these eulogies. The man would gather. Of course, it was only man. It happens mostly in the evenings. So after the evening prayer, when it's dark, would gather in his home, every place in his house, because it's time of mourning. It was covered with black banners and the name of Hussein and Hassan and these imams that they died. And then the leader, the sheikh, the person who leads this ceremonial self-flagellations and the ceremonial mournings, he would recite a eulogy describing what happened, for example, in during that day, that day, and what caused the death of that person, that imam. And that's a very sad story,
Mm.
and he describes it really in details in that during that eulogy, and and then he starts chants the name of that person. So first of all, he provokes the crowd by wailing and crying for what a tragic thing has happened.
Mhm.
Then when you're in that environment, then you start chanting the name of that imam, that specific person during that time. For example, let's say it's Hussein. So you start shouting Hussein, Hussein, and you're half naked. This eulogy, the song he's singing has a rhyme, has a beat, and he provoked by hitting himself, and then you start hitting yourself, chanting the name of that person, and then you start beating your chest to a degree that you bruise actually your
Mm.
chest. And sometimes you start bleeding by hitting yourself and mourning for this dead imam, chanting his name in order to connect to this dead person that connects you to Allah.
Mm.
That's part of this ritually mourning, to add good points and trying to, because the belief is if you just cry for these people and you show how you appreciate of them, they become the medium, the intercessor between you and Allah.
Mm.
And when the day of judgment shows up, if this person which has a specific special place with Allah, he may grant you approval, he may grant you um, um, salvation, if you would call it. There is no such words
Okay.
in Islam, but he would get you into the presence of Allah or to the paradise because he has a special place with him.